Welcome to Guided Spirit Conversations. I'm your host, Marla Goldberg. This podcast has been created with you in mind to acquaint you with some of the most incredible metaphysicians and spiritual leaders from around the globe who have helped others change their lives. In this interactive hour, you will be offered insights and techniques to help you make a difference in your life. Don't forget to subscribe to the show in your favorite listening platform. And here we go, on to the show. Hello. Welcome to Guided Spirit Conversations. I'm Marla Goldberg, and I am so excited about today's show. First of all, I'm always excited about the holiday season, and I hope whatever you're celebrating at this point in time in the season, you're having fun and it's relaxed and you're not being triggered. So just keep enjoying the season and keep breathing if you're finding yourself getting triggered. Today, I have Nancy Orlen Weber as my guest. And I am so excited because I've been hearing about Nancy for so long, and I read her bio and she is just amazing. So I'm just going to clip the tip of the iceberg by sharing that she's a nurse, minister, medical intuitive, animal communicator, holistic lifestyle educator, certified clinical aromatherapist, psychic detective, and she has classes on our sacred soul powers that weave together as tapestries for her life. Nancy is also the author of The Life of a Psychic Detective and All Nature Speaks, Conversations with Pets and Wildlife. She helps people discover their own innate connection with all of life through her writings, workshops, and private sessions. In addition, Nancy speaks as a practical soul, loving to spread her wings wide with feet on the ground and helping others to do the same. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Marla. It's such a pleasure to meet you finally. It's like we're meeting in person.
It is. I'm so happy to meet you. I've heard so many things about you. And I went on your website, which, by the way, will be on the blog, so you can check out Nancy's website, what I'm about to talk about. And on your about, I know I talked to you about this before we got on live, but your story is so phenomenal, and it just goes to show that you don't know where life is going to take you, because you started wanting to, if I remember correctly, you wanted to really start learning about the human mind and psychology and what makes people tick based on some traumatic events that occurred in your life. Is this correct?
Absolutely. I wrote a thesis in the 6th grade on the history of insane asylums.
Wow.
I know. What a strange kid.
How did your teacher react to that? I'm really curious. Do you remember?
No, it was 10 pages. And I don't know that my teacher reacted at all, since he was the one who molested me. But that was a prompt to look at this, like, why do people do what they do when they hurt others? What's prompting it in them? So I was always curious.
And so you labeled it back in the day as insanity.
Yep.
But today, how would you label it?
Oh, a lot of different things. I would say, as adults, we have a responsibility, regardless of genetics, ancestral history, reincarnation, or anything else, to make a choice consciously to do things that are harmless, code of ethics. When we don't, we have a responsibility to look at that. And I can't pass judgment on the actions of someone, except not as a soul, but as an action taken that may be harmful. So labeling them, I learned in working in psychiatry and running an acute psych unit in South Bronx, that what some people call schizophrenia is not schizophrenia. It's copper poisoning. It's low zinc in the body. It is hallucinations from a serious trauma that trap the obsession. And you can free them right up sometimes in days, weeks, minutes. I've done that. I've worked with it. And I find I can't pass a judgment. Every individual has a different reason for being inappropriate or appropriate.
That's really fascinating to hear it put in that context. This is the first time I've heard it put in this context. But I want to go back to your journey, and we can go back to this.
Sure.
So you then, followed a passion to want to be of service, but through nursing, correct?
No.
Okay, clear me up because I'm trying to remember your bio and
No, no,
if
it's
I,
not written. I've never really discussed it except with my family. I wanted to take the SATs to go for pre-med, and my parents said, "We're not paying $15 for you to go to college and get married and be a Mrs." That was like 1959, 60. And I went, okay, I gotcha. And I didn't have $15. So I went looking and I thought, well, there's a 2-year associate program on nursing, and I can use that as my part.
point, yeah.
So I found that I absolutely loved it. And so when I graduated in 1963 as an RN, I that's where I found my gifts in nursing. And so, yes, it was,
Can you elaborate a little bit, especially your earlier experiences?
well, it was kind of funny. One, I have a photographic memory, or I did then. I'm quite old now, older,
Well,
lots.
you're not old, not old. Oh,
No, no, I'm getting there. I'm not in my 80th yet, close. So I'm fine. But I found that the photographic memory and what comes through sometimes are different, right? And as a nurse, I would look in the first episode. I remember I was about a month or two as a nurse at Flower Fifth Avenue in New York City. And the doctor hands me a chart and it says congestive heart failure and the patient's wheeling in. And I look at the patient, I look at the doctor, and I go, wrong diagnosis. Why did he write that? Do an upper GI before I even think that's out of my mouth. And he said, why? I said, just do it, you'll see. So he did. And he came back and he said, how did you know? He had an enlarged hiatal hernia, not congestive heart failure. I said, I could see it, can't you? And when I said see it, I don't know if I literally saw it. I think more that it was just what old us says, gestalt it, grok it, get the whole of it. And and sometimes I see, but it was more energetic field that I was seeing than anything, where the energetic field right by where the hernia was congealed, congested, and everything else was flowing.
that's fascinating.
So it was fun. It was the first time, and thank you to the physician and all the others that followed, who always they trusted me, and that was nobody ever trusted me before about anything. So here it was amazing, amazing.
Wow,
Yeah.
that sounds phenomenal. So, what led you to go? Because there was a story in your bio online that talked about there was a catatonic patient in a psychiatric hospital that you did something with him and you actually got him talking.
New admissions, we all took turns. So this one, I was up, and we sat in a big open living room, experimental unit, acute psychotic, or some of them came out of Bronx State. He was in for 20 years, nonverbal. And so he sat with his hands between his legs, moving them like this. Just, and I thought, that's a language. It's not American Sign Language. It feels like a language. It's an expression. So I started telling my hands, go ahead, move and talk to him. And so my hands started going. Every time he did, I pretended I was responding. I don't know how many minutes went by, 5 minutes, six. And he said, what's your name? And I went, Nancy. What's yours? John. At that moment, a staff member walked by and went, oh, he's talking. And I went, shut up. And John goes, thank you.
Okay, so the thank you was telling the person to shut up, and he was grateful for that.
Yep,
Nice. He had an advocate in you. He had someone to protect him.
exactly. Exactly. He needed to do everything in his own time, in his own way, and obviously that's old PTSD, as we call it in today's world.
And it's funny, I was talking to somebody yesterday about PTSD and how it, various ways it affects us.
Right.
And it's quite something when people have PTSD. Do you have any thoughts on the best ways to, like, if somebody starts with their anxiety attacks, the best ways to sort of like calm it down? Because mine is about breathing, you
Oh,
know.
it's always that's first. To me, if you don't have enough oxygen in the brain, for instance, or in the bloodstream, your body is going to be terrified.
Yes.
It feels under attack by lack of oxygen. So the first thing, that old adage, 3 deep breaths, but I like belly breathing like a baby. And I tell people, you ever on a phone and the menu is forever? Good opportunity. Close your eyes, breathe into your belly, then your chest, then slowly let it out. And just keep doing that for a little while. Most of the time they hit that not so much peace, I want to call it, but a slight trance, a slight letting go of everything, a little bit
It's
of
sort of,
right.
it's like getting in a meditative kind of
Right.
space. It just,
Yeah.
and when you're not used to oxygen, when all that oxygen comes in, all of a sudden your body starts feeling differently.
Oh, it's a world of difference, and we know that. So that those who aren't well for any reason, I always tell people keep an oximeter, measure your oxygen with your fingertip. It's very easy. And that way, if it drops below, say, 96, even though 98, 97 is prime, but 96 is still okay. But if it starts dropping to 94, 93, you start deep breathing and you do not stop. You sit back, you relax, you drop your shoulders. I use self help tools a lot uh, as part of it for me because it was starting with age 31 after a lot of traumas. And I started, my first thing was lay down, belly breathe. And then I got into any self help tools, music, putting on music that keeps you in both hemispheres. So I started looking at everything that dealt with how to keep you in both hemispheres so that the brain can process the fact that it needs to do better right now. It's getting frightened. And when it gets frightened, it stops processing from the right to the left hemisphere. And fear will drive the adrenals crazy. So there's this
Yes.
whole system that goes on. And I know that some people just don't have it in them to do things. But breathing is the fastest and easiest way. Music, I find, and I use specific, very specific essential oils to diffuse or use, or just breathe in for a moment, just to open up the breathing, just to get it, but also sometimes for that relaxation response that you need. So it depends on where they are, because if you're dealing with people who are seriously what you'd call clinically depressed, try and get them off the couch.
Right.
You got to start somewhere, right? We start somewhere. So
Which is great to share because I'm glad you brought up depression because this is the season that triggers a lot of people.
light. So I warn people who have SAD or anything where they're homebound, they're not whatever. Check the lighting you have because you want as best as possible full spectrum lighting that's safe and healthy. And that way you get some of it. And vitamin D2 and K3, vitamin D alone doesn't take into the system as well as with K3. So, like everything else, like trace minerals and minerals all have a chain. So, if you are high in copper, you're going to be low in zinc, that kind of thing.
Right.
You'll see a lot of calcium, magnesium kind of things on the market. But if you're just taking calcium alone, well, you're not getting any magnesium to push it, or you're not getting calcium to push the magnesium, whatever that chain is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need manganese. And then so it's a whole response of pulling each other up. If you look at all the different wonderful things that the body needs, they kind of all help each other get there. But if you leave one out, it's not going to work.
It's like going up rungs of stairs, but one of the rungs is missing, so you have to take that extra big step, or hopefully not miss it.
If you're lucky, that big step will still be useful, or all the steps will be missing because it dies out and it just gets out of the body if it can't be driven into the cell. Trace minerals can drive bigger molecules into the cell, and that matters. That's why things like Himalayan pink salt, is so effective because it's got 84 trace minerals like we do, because Himalayans were under the sea before we came out of the waters. So when you look at that, it's a perfect match. And if you just put pinches of it in your food or water, you're getting some trace minerals because most people don't have enough of it in the food.
Especially if you're big on fast food or processed food.
Exactly. Well, yeah.
Big culprits. Big culprits.
Yep. Oh, well, they did a recent study, speaking of that, in research, men who eat fast foods, paper has phthalates in it, alters the sperm.
Interesting.
Research. It came out, I think, about last year or the year before. I follow all of it because of the petrochemicals in cord blood babies I've been following for like 10 years.
Go ahead. I just had this epiphany that I just learned about it having petroleum in Oreo cookies.
Well, think of petroleum jelly. It
Yeah.
says right there, you're putting it on skin that gets into the bloodstream. It accumulates. It's the accumulation that's so dangerous because it blocks. And if anybody wants to read some brilliant woman, it's Dr. Candace Pert, P-E-R-T, who was the leading neuropeptide researcher in the world when she was around and said, I will prove to you that your mind is in every cell of the body and where things land. And petrochemicals land between the nerves, the bridge called the synapse, and they block and cause interruption.
That is so brilliant. And I've heard of Dr. Candace Pert, and amazing, absolutely amazing. I want to go back to you though.
Okay.
And so we're at this journey. So you started at the psychiatric hospital and you started doing these, but where did the psychic detectiving
Oh,
come in?
I'm in there.
Because
Okay, the first episode of that there. Actually, other things came before that. My first nursing job where I found some things, but
oh, let's hit that. Let's hit that, and then go back to the detective.
okay, let's see. After I was injured, doesn't matter, and I was wearing a body brace, so I couldn't lift patients, and I worked in an isolation nursery in Maimonides. And this goes, I think, 1965, right around there. And so, or 66, right there. So I'm working there, and there are 8 babies and me. I'm in charge, nobody else is there. And so my supervisor would relieve me when I'd go to lunch. And one day I'm sitting at lunch, and 2 nurses are nearby talking about this doctor who delivering a newborn baby, the cord was wrapped around. She ended up killing him. And so
Oh,
I said, you were there? And they said, oh, no, no, no. One of our friends told us. I said, your friend? They said, well, she's a nurse right there. She saw it. I said, who's your friend? They went zip. They wouldn't say. But they did name the doctor while they were talking, a female. So about a month later, I get a new admission and a chart. And I look at the chart, and it's the female. And she ordered digoxin 25 milligrams, which would instantly kill anybody, a horse, anything. Because if you're a human being and it's by prescription, it's 0.25 milligrams. So I went quiet. I know what I'm going to do. And I lifted the phone. I said, Supervisor, I have to go to the bathroom. And I took the chart, the paper, stuck it in my bra. Went out to the copy machine when she came in, made a copy, put that in my bra, took the real one out, showed her. I was maybe 21. And she said, oh my God. She said, but you wouldn't go to jail because I said, I didn't give it. What are you, crazy? I
right.
said, now you're going to call the chief of pediatrics. and get him here now. So that was my trust of what I was getting as go do.
Right.
And I trusted it. So he walked in with his entourage and I told him what happened. He said, I'll go speak with her. I said, not good enough. Now I was shy. I was painfully shy my whole life. And here I was with the mouth and a half. And so, but when I trust what comes through. And I said, I have proof. I have a copy of that order. And if you don't do something, come back to me tomorrow and tell me what happened. I'm going to the newspapers and the radio shows. Good luck. So he walked out storming, and my supervisor was smiling ear to ear. And she said, I love you. I said, me too. I said, who does he think he is? And so the next day, he came back and told me she didn't have a medical license.
Oh my God.
That's the first one I helped put away.
First of all, how do you not have a license and practice medicine?
Before computers, she was in med school in Chicago and failed out. Only she saw things and she was able to create a fake license.
Oh, wow.
Now you can't. I mean, probably you can if you're very, very whatever, but it's much harder. Thank goodness.
Yes,
But that,
because we have enough quacks as it is.
right,
Sorry to
exactly.
put it that way, but some people are just not as ethical as others.
Right.
I don't know how else to put it.
Well, I think the word doctor is supposed to mean teacher, educator. And I don't go at anybody who doesn't like to educate. It's that simple for me. You don't want to educate me so I can control what I can control. I can change what I can change. And I had a wonderful, because of that, luck in picking the right people to work on me. Very simple. You know, I tell them who I am and what I use for me and why. And they tell me where they can go with that or not. And then I make my decision. And I've realized that's the only way it really helps us enter into self healing where we can help the outcome, even if they need to do something.
That if nothing else today, that is a huge tip about how to look at practitioners who are you're checking out to work on you or to reevaluate who is already working with you on your providers.
May I share one instance to teach?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Because of certain violence that happened to me, I had a tooth back in here somewhere, tooth 19, I'm told, and it needed massive surgery, bone surgery, everything. And the oral surgeon told me 33 years ago it would be 2 3 hour surgical procedures, Monday and then the following Monday. I said, okay. And that weekend, I was giving a workshop in Connecticut. And I said to them, I will be focused on self healing and working with you at the same time, just so you know. And I told them why. And so all that weekend, I painted imagination, beautiful bright blues and greens in that area, and said to the cells the following: thank you. Thank you for showing me all the trouble I've had there. Thank you for trying to do your best to maintain some kind of viability. I'll bet it's not great. So many of you will need to leave. And when you do, I wish you well into the universe so that you can transform your energy into something very useful and very loving. Bless you for having been so long in taking care of the best you can. So I then go, and I kept repeating that. I go in, I'm sitting in the chair, and I said, before you start, I need to center. He said, okay, just nod when you're ready. And so I thanked the building and everyone it took and all the trucks and all the machinery and all the rest of it. I go through this whole thing to the instruments, to all the schooling you all had, blah, 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 and to your hands of light. May they be blessed for everybody. Thank you so much for this magical moment. So he's working on me. I don't know how long, maybe a half hour. He's going, oh, oh, oh. It's like they're flying out. An hour and 15 minutes later, he stops and he says, you're done. I said, oh, okay. I'll see you next Monday. He said, how you feeling? I said, great. He said, no, 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 you don't understand. 6 hour surgery in 1 hour and 15 minutes. I don't know how that happened.
I've got goosebumps running up and down my body right now. That is such a great story.
Thank you, because I want everybody to at least do something to make a difference. We know cellular communication exists.
It
Read
does.
Candace Pert. Molecules of Emotions is a big, thick book. A lot of people won't do, but you can read all the articles about her interviews and get the feeling that our bodies are alive.
And not only that, we have the ability and the power to work with these cells in transmuting, and in changing what is going on with them, as you did with your oral surgery situation.
Right. And I've done that again anytime I need, except when I'm so terrified. And that's when I have to resort to deep breathing and music and essential oils and anything I can get my hands on. And if there is somebody to comfort and anchor, it's no different than anything else. And just a slight touch for those who are not alone, whether it's a pet, whether it's a human, it, it matters. It can help ground us, right?
So much, so much. And I will say, my tug transitioned in June, and it makes such a difference because I've always had animals, multiple animals, and I did it for his best good, not for mine. If it was for mine, I'd keep him around.
Sure.
But I believe in dignity, quality of life, and he was losing his because he had wobblers.
Oh,
And but the point I'm bringing up is that for me, I agree with you because having a pet companion does wonders for healing, for just the exchange that one has with each other. Powerful, absolutely powerful.
we know that just sharing with other species, if people know on social media, what's their search? Oh, a deer, a baby deer raised by a dog. Oh,
Yeah.
etc. And when we see those things, I've had chipmunks on my lap who won't eat except for my hand. I've had squirrels sit on my shoulder waiting for the chipmunk to leave. And blue jays learning how to put more than one in their mouth because the squirrel could do it after he learned it from the chipmunk. And I'd watch all of it as this is the real connection between all life is we all are in communication. It's how we communicate and what we communicate, right? And so other
Yes,
species don't have that fence that many of us have, you know? They
it's
may have
true.
trees, they may have territorial markers, but they don't have that. Well, I don't like you because you don't believe like I believe.
Right. Exactly. They don't get into all that human stuff, and which gives them so much more freedom to live their life in a higher vibrational way.
Absolutely. I think they are a lot more openly loving, easier. I've had a big deer we raised, li- little boy and then big boy and then oh boy. And he had injured a leg and we nursed him all winter, fed him and etc. So when he was fine. But one day he came out of the woods with all his three horn, whatever, I don't know what you call anything. They're just horns to me. And he
Yeah.
came out blinking because a big branch was stuck in his eye almost. And he
Oh.
just came right over, put his head down, looking at me, and put his head down so I could remove the branch. And then just stayed there. And so
Oh.
I nuzzled him for a moment, and then he went off running like a nut. And so, okay,
He's good. You healed, and what a beautiful thing. Is that what we would find in your book? Um, Wait, I'll get the name of it. All Nature Speaks: Conversations with Pets and Wildlife. Is that the kind of stories we're going to be finding in the book?
a lot like horses. Oh my God,
I love
hysterical
horses.
fun. I've never ridden a horse. So one of the stories is about the first time I ever worked on a horse. And that I look back and I go, you are truly crazy, child. You take all these risks, but they weren't risks because of my belief. No preconception. I didn't want to know anything for a good reason, like cold cases or
Yes.
fresh cases. Don't tell me anything. You may tell me if it's a murder. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe I don't want to hear that. I don't know. But I trust that if we live in the moment and we're receptive to the highest good for everyone involved, then we have to trust what comes through to us. And I
Yes.
trusted saying yes. And when I was asked to just walk the horse into the field, I had never been near a horse in my life. And I was wearing sneakers because I had no clue.
Right.
And I looked at him and I kind of yanked a little bit on the rope and went, oh, honey, this is like a leash, isn't it? I've had plenty of dogs I walked and all, but you're a big puppy. Come on, let's go together. You ready to walk with me? And I just sauntered with him. And it was fun and it was fine. And little did I know the outcome. And it's in my book.
Okay, well, there's a good tease for you to pick up the book about Nature Speaks. I have to make sure I'm saying this correctly. All Nature Speaks: Conversations with Pet and Wildlife. And
Right,
now you have the other book, which is The Life of a Pet, a Psychic Detective, not a pet detective, a psychic detective.
right.
Let's talk about, first of all, when did you realize that you could do psychic detective work? What was the experience that opened this up for you?
I think it was very gradual until a detective kind of knocked on my door because I worked on a lot of different things, not thinking. But at the psych unit, uh, one day at noon, we had one empty bed, and I was checking everything. I was running the unit on the day shift, and I walk into the empty unit and I smell smoke. And I called in some of my staff, and they go, "Well, what drugs are you on? We don't smell anything." And so I went home and I was so nervous and anxious. And at night, I was counting everybody, and I got to work about a half hour early. I'm always an early bird, but not that early.
Right?
There were three new admissions in the middle of the night, all police pickups for wielding a knife, doing other things. Two women, one man. And I looked at the man and I started feeling like I just wanted to run, but I stayed steady. Okay, so the other nurse leaves, I'm in charge. And about 10 a.m. in the morning, he starts walking back arm in arm with one of the other patients. I said, "You can't go there. You stay in the middle in the living room if you're with anybody." So they did. At noon, 24 hours later, I was in a meeting with medical physicians who are training to be psychiatrists on on the unit in a room, and I hear fire, and I jump up, and because I was so nervous, I had a head count of who's who, easy, and we got everybody out, and the chief of psychiatry of New York State, Dr. Ed Kaufman at that time, I'm walking with him as the last people out. Fire have been called, police have been called, and the unit was burnt down. And so I'm walking out with him, I'm laughing. And he goes, "What's so funny?" I said, "I just figured me out." He said, "What?" I said, "You'll see." So we had to go to another part of the hospital, and we all sat with the clients in a big circle, and we went one by one around the room. We had to transfer them, we had or send them home, whatever. And so when we got to me, I pointed at him. Now I knew to the left of me was Lisa, 19-year-old. Hands were weapons known to the police. She put three men who tried to attack her in the hospital. To the right of me was a psychiatric resident in training who was a black belt in jujitsu. So I was quite calm. And I
Okay.
pointed at the guy and I went, "You set fire to a mattress in the closet." Now nobody knew what it was. I said, "Because I wouldn't let you have sex with that woman." Well, he leapt up and went for my throat, and he's right here when Andre. the physician, and Lisa, the aide, jumped on him, threw him on a mattress behind me. And I got up and I whispered in his ear. And I said, nothing would happen to me right now if I broke your arm. You're a killer. You almost killed us. But I will still get my paycheck and you can go to prison.
Wow, what did he react to with that?
I don't know. I walked away. I didn't care.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know if he said words or if
I
he was in shock because it's like nobody would have ever done that before.
Right. And so he was handcuffed and sent to Bronx State. And they said, well, we'll reassess. And I said, really? So you want your place burnt down? Good luck.
Whoa. I love that, Nancy. I love how outspoken you are, how you're so front and center, and mama fierce because you were mama fierce about your
I love that word. Oh,
area.
thank you. Oh, Mama Fierce. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you're very mama fierce because it was all about taking care of the people who you were taking
Responsible,
care of. Yes.
accountable to. It's
Yes.
anybody's life.
And so many people are not mama fierce or papa fierce.
It takes a lot to become that if you're not natural. I wasn't natural at it. I had a piece of it from early on. I think I was 6 the first time I noticed that. Where two boys, when I moved, made fun of a little boy who was walking past with glasses, and they called him Four Eyes. And I whipped around and looked at them, and I said, you better apologize to him. Everybody's got problems. You just can't see them. I'm sure you do too. So they said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, why are you apologizing to me? You didn't tell me that. Get off my porch and go apologize. This painfully shy girl, part of me went, who are you? What are you?
Wow.
So that to me is the channeling.
Yeah.
That's allowing the soul to gather everything and have no interference with the painful shy part. There's no interference at that point.
It's so beautiful. It really is. But I want to go into the pet detective because pet psychic detective work because you have this amazing book out, a psychic detective.
The life of a psychic detective. Yeah,
I'm sorry, the life. Thank you.
that's okay.
So share with us. Tell us about your psychic detective work and what's in the book. Not all the details. You have to leave those carrots dangling a little bit, but
A little bit only. Okay.
just a little bit.
A little bit. So one of the things I found when I wrote, and this isn't the first, this is a revision of a revision because I wanted clarity again and again. And what was clear to me is I wanted the stories to be the hook to get you to read, but after each one, there are what others have said for them, incredible ideas for them to use for anything. And I just got one from a woman who I know, lovely. Uh, she's part of my fan side Facebook page. And she said, so I used the one on missing items when a friend called and said, my sister lost 3 items. And I immediately trusted myself and said, oh, they're there, and told her where. All 3 were where she said. She had never done it before in her life, but she used the ideas I expressed. And I did that again, based on what the stories were. So a lot of that, first, for those who don't know, and I would love to just clarify, I
Thanks.
never talk about any ongoing cases or cases that have not been completely adjudicated to the point that the families are safe, I'm safe, and my family is safe, and that all who knew that perpetrator are safe. Otherwise, I zip it. You don't know what I've worked on. So the cases are older for a purpose. Most of the murderers are dead, and those who aren't ever coming out, no matter how many appeals. They've lost every one of them. I have followed every case carefully. I also know all the detectives I worked with back then, still. We're friends and families. Most of the families, the ones who are still working wonderfully to do the right thing in life for everyone. So, and
Yeah.
one of them is that a beautiful soul came to me in one of the stories. She came for as a client, and I looked at her and I thought, you had a horrible, tragic event happen. Family member the day before, murdered. And so I didn't know where she came from or what. And I said, look, I don't know who's in charge, but whoever is in charge of your case about your sister, I want you to just give them my name and detective, I think it was Ross English at the time, who was chief detective, county detective of the year. So people knew who he was. So I figured even if it's a different county or different state. So it turned out that the man who called me in charge of this case, I had met 5 years before on another case. And he
Oh,
said,
God.
when I heard it was you, he said, would you mind coming here and we'll go over it? So I went, met him and his partner, and we went to the crime scene. And when I stepped into the apartment landing, there's a second floor and a first, and she was on the first. I looked up and I knew the killer had been there. And I said that, and David, Captain David, he looked at me and said, no, there's a 19-year-old living with his mom. I said, no, she's got a boyfriend. And his name is John, and the last name begins with an R, and it's a single syllable. I can't get the rest. He said, yeah, we spoke with him. He passed a polygraph. I said, I don't care what he passed. He's guilty. He said, okay, kind of nodding. And we walk into the victim's living room. And this is something I find anybody can learn if they want. I look around, and another detective who is fabulous in another murder case said he calls it soaking up the scene. And so I soak up the scene on, you know how you can look at what's missing,
Hmm.
right? What's missing here? What doesn't feel in place? What feels out of place? Except for hoarders, they won't know. But other than that, most of us will feel something's off here. Well, to me, the vacuum in the corner, on the far corner, I can still see it. And I walked over and I touched it, and I went, he used the cord here. And then we went into the bedroom, which was still a fresh crime scene. And I waited and asked, now, when I'm working, I look like an ice queen because the moment I have any emotions, I'm not in the right space.
Right.
I'm too grounded at that point. I can't be. I can just keep myself open to what's going on. And suddenly I saw what was going on. I described it. I described the methodology, which I won't repeat for the sake of the family. And she had 5 daughters who are wonderful people. And I'm still very close to her sister. So we're careful. And but it's in the book what happened, etc. And turned out, because it's also the Nancy Grace show was part of that
Oh,
afterwards, where we discussed that, and she immediately understood what happened. And I looked and said, go back to him. He has a scar on his right cheek, and he wears a Western belt buckle. And they said, no, he doesn't. Both of them. I said, you're blind. Now, I've never done that with a detective, except then. And I laughed, and David laughed afterwards because we've talked. And I said, you're blind. Go back and look. Before you do another thing, would you please go back? You thought it was her boyfriend. No, he found her horribly. So he's going to be stuck in trauma his whole life unless he helps himself. But oh my God, no. So they went back on video. Once they saw it, they brought him in. Western belt buckle, scar on the right cheek, John
wow.
Reese, and they questioned him on video, and he fully confessed. He just died last October in prison where he belonged.
Goosebumps.
And
That's amazing.
so what happened with the other one, I briefly touched the 5 years before. And I recently spoke to David and asked him if you have a question, John, on that. He said he wouldn't talk, but I know he was involved. So there's these mysteries surrounding solving mysteries, sometimes
Right.
open up doors of, oh my God, now what? But we see.
That those are incredible stories, and there's even more. So please pick up The Life of a Psychic Detective. Nancy, where do you find that book? Is it Amazon? Is it Audibles?
Right now, it's only on Amazon and at my website, signed. And if people want it gift wrapped sent to people, it's at my website for holidays or whatever. I love doing
And, and we're going to get more because I know we've got some classes that you teach on this. But before we do, it's charity shout out time. A little
that.
bit late for charity shout out time. And your charity is hopeforjustice.org. So, what is Hope for Justice?
It is about stopping sex trafficking and rehabilitating those who have been.
I love that.
I am a member of Young Living Essential Oil Company, and one conference, one convention, we had the founder of it and the first person he saved were there. And because I've always believed when I published my book, a dollar of every purchase goes to Hope for Justice. It's they partnered with Young Living, and I always send to that part. That's my choice charity, because once you are traumatized, whether it's early in life or later in life, you got a lot to work on,
Yes, you do.
and you need all the help.
Yes. And essential oils are so powerful. The aromas are always so powerful. That's why, like, if people put cinnamon or vanilla, it makes you, reminds you of something of childhood or of home life or something that's wonderful. And it's just a little something that people use.
Depends, right? Right now, I have Christmas Spirit, a blend that I love from them, uh, in my living room when I work, because I can work in my living room or here or whatever. And so I find that the frequency matters in energetic
Yes,
fields. And one of the ways I keep my frequency higher and steady, because I'm not always steady,
right.
I can get very feisty about things going on in the world. I can get very activism like. I have been an activist and many times in different ways, fought bills, won. Hell no, you don't do that to people. We started an ordination for lay practices for healers when new statutes, wording in statutes for licensing boards in nursing and massage, healing, touch, and energy in quite a few states. I was livid. 2010, I picked up the phone to the head of I have a local unit, which is not a typical religious one. It's about the freedom to do what we believe in self care, let's say, and spiritual healing, all spiritual healing, all kinds, whether it's through books, touch, doesn't matter. Podcasts, that we cover it all. And we did it because I was so angry. And I made my nursing license inactive because how dare anybody tell people that you can't help another adult who wants your help?
Right.
That to me is unconscionable. So we ordain a lot of people nationwide, and we teach clinical aromatherapy and all kinds of things because I love it. And I believe that if we don't have everyone feeling like, because I know and you know, when we help somebody else, we feel stronger.
Yes.
We feel better about ourselves because we have more respect for ourselves for connecting, right? And
It's so
so,
true.
right? And so that's all I want is, we wouldn't have all these issues. The case I mentioned about soaking up the scene deals with it as a byproduct of it from the woman who came to me, whose son was, that was not part of the crime itself, but he was maybe 11, his sister was 15, and he would chase her with a knife, scissors, right? And I picked it up while she first came to me about this missing girl who was a friend's child. And she came back after the case, and we sat and talked, and I said, "So is he still doing it, and what have you done about it?" And she said, "Well," and I said, "First, you're going to talk with your neighbors, gather them all, and sit down and say, look, I got problems here with my son, and he's terrifying my daughter, he terrifies me, and we need help, and I don't know what to do. Call social services immediately, or I will. You have a choice here, because it takes a child, a village to raise, right?
Yeah, it's so true.
But I felt that the odd part was that the killer of, in that case, also was raised without getting the help he needed. And I swear, it is so important for people not to hide it because their kid is different, you know?
Yeah.
And if I don't care whether it's a teacher or a family member or a friend who says, "Oh my God, there's something really," so you're not placing a label on them. You're seeking to
Help.
see. Right. And I always warn them, do a biochemical analysis. And they go, "What's that?" And I tell them the story of Dr. Alice Schaus, who's a PhD nutritionist, who dropped 30% recidivism in prisons in an experiment, and they never used it again. Don't ask why.
Wow. That's powerful.
Right. So that one was easy, but he had a 16-year-old who had a crime sheet parents brought to him. And he listened to the whole thing and he said, get a bottle of zinc and start putting them on one a day and don't stop. And they said, and what else? And he said, that's it. They said, that's it? Yeah. So 5 years go by, knock, knock on the door. This big, handsome guy knocks on his door and says, Dr. Schaus, yes, I want to thank you. You told my parents to give me zinc. He said, yes, because I believed you could never absorb it. You needed extra. Never had a problem again, graduated college.
Good for him.
Right. So things like that, if parents didn't take him finally, who knows what
Right.
his life would have been? And others, the fallout.
So amazing. So let's talk briefly about, because we only have a few minutes left and I want to make sure I hit everything that you want to talk about.
Okay.
But I wanted to talk briefly about your classes and what you're offering.
Right now, it is a 2 4 hour of each group. Animal communication is the one coming up this weekend. And then in 2 weeks, it completes. They get a certificate, but not certification yet. I can do certifications, but it would have to be a lot longer than that. So I might develop that for those who wish. And then psychic detective workshops coming up in January, and everything's on my website. And then in February, I do medical intuitive, and I'm not focused on any others yet for March. I got to take it a little bit slow.
It's a lot of classes, a lot of great learning ahead. So Nancy, we only have a few minutes left. What have I not asked you that you would like to talk about? This is free reign to talk about anything you want to talk about.
Cool. I know this is the time for giving. And so for me, the poorest in the nation, if we didn't have poverty the way we have it, if we help lift them some way, like the Lakotas, which are freezing in the winter, annual income 8,000, annual income 8,000. They don't have cars because they can't afford it. So how are they going to get to work? But
Right.
their children don't have warm clothes, don't have warm mittens and scarves and hats. And the Mohawks in upstate New York, all the different indigenous living in northern that don't have the wealth, they're our First Nation. They kept the land here. They took care of it. And whether you call it reparation, whether you call it anything, I believe in the ancient way of doing things with love embedded in what I'm giving them. So I ended up crocheting last winter about 100 scarves, mittens, hats for children and shipping them to the both places because I have connections there. And everything I did, every stitch, I would laugh and go, I wonder which child is going to put this on. You need to know strangers love you. Strangers care for you. We're not a world of indifference. So whatever you feel, whether it's that or anywhere, not just yours, not just the people you know, not just the people you care about. It is
Yeah.
so important to change, to leave a better place than we found it. So for
Yeah,
me,
absolutely.
I've always felt because I'm a very good friends with a beautiful Mohawk author and painter and artist. He's just amazing. Patrick Brown. Wow. And he's part of our ministry. So he and his partner love Catherine Faso. I love them. Good people. And to listen and know what the people there, they're fine, but most of them aren't. There's a whole bunch of Head Start for children. And so for me, it is, you need to know that not all of us don't care what happens to you. Whether it's the poorest in Louisiana, Mississippi, education, books, doesn't matter. We don't have to know them. We're supposed to be all connected. So those who held a faith belief of any sort, either you're all connected or you're not. Either you act like we're all connected or you're not really all connected. We have to walk in the words we believe. That's faith.
That's so true.
Yeah. So that's me.
That is so beautiful. Nancy, thank you so much. There's still so many questions I need to ask you. So I'm going to have Bridget set you up for, and if you will agree to this, to come back again next year with us and share some more of this amazing conversation, because you've given so much, not only viable conversation about what could be happening with people who just seem a little bit off center, which is the term I'll use, and get them to really be centered in their own life. And you've just been so powerful and helpful for just so many in the show. And so I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for what you do, how you share. And I just love you.
Can I say ditto to everything?
Yes, you can. You definitely
Someone
say it.
in a mirror. Thank you. It's a beautiful mirror.
Thank you. It is a beautiful mirror. So thank you. I'm so grateful. I want to say thank you to Bridget. All you do for me, you're my right hand, my left hand, my tech genius. Thank you for what you do and how you help. I want to thank you, the listening audience, for taking time out of your day, out of your life, for being a part of the show. The show was created for you, with you in mind, to bring you amazing people like Nancy and her modalities and what she does and what she's teaching and how she can help you help others and be of service, whether it's service to yourself or service to another, which is, as the saying goes, we are many, we are one, which is what Nancy was just talking about believing we're all one. So thank you. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, review it. I would love to know what you think. If you have any ideas for other metaphysicians or techniques that you'd like to hear about on the show, please email me at marla@mghealer.com. Also, please check out my website at MarlaGoldberrg. Goldberg has 2 R's.com. See what I do and how I can work with you and help you on your life's journey. In addition, next week we have Holly Duckworth coming on to the show as our guest. Holly releases subconscious limitations for spiritual seekers so they can experience the life they're divinely meant to live. Hello, Francine. Thank you for tuning in. As I leave you, as always, I send you love, blessings, and gratitude. Know how grateful I am that you're in my life in whatever capacity you're in it, because not only are you a student for me, you are my teacher, and not only am I a teacher, I am your student. So thank you. Total gratitude for that. And if you haven't heard these words today, let me say them to you. And if you have heard it, you're going to hear them again. I love you. You are loved, not just by me, not by your family and friends, but there's so many beings on the other side of the veil who love you and are just cheering you on and are your biggest cheerleaders. Talk to them. Ask them for what you need, want, desire. Let them start conspiring on your behalf, and then be open to how you receive it, because it may not be as linear as you might hope for. It could be very esoteric, found in a quote or a music lyric or something else that just passes you by like a book falling off the shelf. So be open so that you know that they're working on your behalf. I wish you all a very safe, happy holiday season. Remember, breathe. If you're getting triggered, breathe. Excuse yourself. Enjoy this holiday season. You have all the tools, so you know how to control what's going on in your world. Till next week, you are loved. Take care.